Well, welcome back to the channel, everybody. So we have a slightly new setup today, and something I just really want to test it out is kind of just deep diving into this article on CNBC. So if you're curious about what turnover contagion is, this article kind of explains it. So let's dive right in. My name is Michael Klukas, also known as KES, and I help teams and leaders improve their life and careers through keeping everything simple. So this is a really interesting article, at least one that I think is interesting in terms of trying to really get in touch with your team or what's happening in the workforce right now, knowing that there are a lot of layoffs going on, like right now. So in the article, so let me show you guys real quick what I mean. So knowing full well that right now we have from like Meta, Twitter, Salesforce, Amazon. So there's a lot of layoffs going on in the tech industry. But then also at the same time, there are a lot of layoffs happening in other fields as well. But it's something that really does impact a lot of people in a lot of different industries. So as we go through the article, the main thing that people are realizing, so like People Analytics from Visor found that employees are 7.7% more likely to leave after an involuntary resignation or termination occurs within their team, while 9.1% are more prone to resign if the teammate's exit was voluntary. And so the idea of leaving your job because your team member has, or leaving your job because they were laid off, that is something that I think speaks volumes to, again, the culture and company that you have, as well as the team you're trying to run. And this is important for both team members and team leads. So this experiment or this survey was run across 86 companies or organizations with 1,000 employees around the world. And humans being very social animals, ones that are prone to copying what we see or what others do, it does make sense that turnover contagion is a very real effect and a very real problem if it's not something that is being addressed in a positive, again, keyword there's positive, in a positive and meaningful way. So let's get back to the article real quick. Going over when people choose to quit. So when a coworker's intentions to quit become obvious to others, their behaviors and attitudes about their job and company can become a trigger for others to reevaluate their own employment situations. And that's super important, knowing full well that we are still in a very strong job market right now. And despite everything that we have going on with the Fed and with inflation and the continual strong labor market, there are a lot of opportunities right now for different workers. And this is in spite of still mass layoffs. And it's interesting to say, knowing full well that, hey, I personally don't want to get laid off. I recently got hired at a new company. So I say recently, but it's been a couple months now, and I do like my team quite a bit. However, I also understand, having left my last job where I worked in retail as a manager, that when I left, and as I've gone back and heard the story multiple times, that more people since then left around the same exact time. And I was kind of the catalyst for that, whether I meant to be or not. And it makes sense because I had a large team in terms of people I was managing. So it ranged between like 20 to 30 to 40 people. But then at the same time, the leadership team was very small. And this is something that the article also goes over, that smaller teams are the most at risk for turnover contagion. So employees who work in a team of 3 to 4 or 3 to 5 people are 12.1% more likely to resign. And then this is compared to 14.5% for teams of 6 to 10 people. And this is, again, because our impact of relationships that we have with our coworkers does impact the decisions that we make. So going down, smaller teams may interact more frequently and get a better sense of each other's shared experiences of the working conditions, the organization as a whole, or even management, and of course, each other's turnover intentions. And I think it's something that team leaders especially have to be aware of is turnover contagion can last up to 135 days. And that is from the moment an employee voluntarily resigns. And for layoffs, the window is shortened to 105 days, but that's still a long time. It's super important to then say, okay, if people want to leave, if there is a possibility that people will leave, what can I do? What am I able to actually do to make sure it doesn't happen? Well, the article does go into that, and I do agree with some of the things that they go over. So sometimes you can get carried away when a lot of people leave at the same time without taking a moment to step back and really evaluate, does this make the most sense for me? And so asking these questions of, do I feel engaged at work? Can I support my current employer's mission? Can I balance my work with my life outside of work? What's my perceived burnout status? Do I feel fairly compensated, and can I see a future for myself at this company? And is the driver of my thoughts and feelings about quitting influenced more by my peers who are leaving or based on my own motivations? For me personally, one of the things I don't like about that little list of things to ask is what's my burnout status? So I wouldn't approach it from the angle of what's my burnout status. Instead, I would be approaching it in terms of how does work make me feel? Do I actually feel encouraged and motivated to go to work? Or is this just something that I am dreading going to every single day? And that does obviously relate to burnout, but that is, I think, a much better indicator because it gives you a better grasp of what is the reasoning, as opposed to, well, I'm just burnt out because I had a very hard week versus I don't want to go to work. And this has been a continual pattern for the past 3 months kind of thing. And that is, I think, an important distinction to make. Another tactic that they often recommend in this article is this idea of if they're worried about people quitting or more people resigning, there are pre-quitting behaviors to look out for. So that is the decreased productivity, a lesser commitment to long-term timelines, or leaving early from work more frequently than usual. Now, that's accurate, but it's also very important that, so it goes into this idea of stay interviews or the exploration of internal mobility opportunities to further engage remaining team members. I think that's a very roundabout way of saying, hey, you need to have one-on-ones with your teams. It is so important that you actively sit down and say, hey, I want to check in with you. How is work going? How are things in your personal life? What are things that I can do as a leader to support your growth, your development, and what do you need to be successful? How can I help? These one-on-ones are super imperative to, one, mitigate turnover contagion, two, foster a good relationship with your team, and three, actually genuinely show that you are a human who wants the best for your team while still providing results for your work. You have to be able to remove yourself from the worries and concerns of, am I going to lose my talented team members? Because if you don't take time to actively say, hey, I want you guys to know I'm here to support you. The company has goals, but without a team, no company would actually be able to survive. Like if you were going to McDonald's and every worker just suddenly left, what would you do? You could not do anything without your team. So having these one-on-ones, having these check-ins, the ability to say, hey, I want to make sure that you are okay. There's a lot going on right now. What can I do to make you successful? Is going to be a much better conversation. And I think a much more preemptive way of ensuring there's employee engagement without forcing your employee's hand to make it feel like, hey, I'm just trying to get ahead of the curve to make sure you don't leave when your team member just left and they were also an A player. It's instead reframing the conversation to, hey, there's a lot going on. I know people are leaving. There's a lot happening in the company right now. How are you feeling? What can I do? What do you need? Moving the conversation away from yourself and the company and towards the needs and self-actualization of your employees. I think that's a very important distinction here as we go over this idea of turnover contagion. And so I do want to encourage you guys to know that, hey, if you are going through layoffs, if there are a lot of resignations happening in the company right now, that's an indicator. It's a great indicator. And unfortunately, it's a lagging indicator because it usually happens after the fact, but it's a good chance to really check in and actually connect with your team, course correct, and say, am I being the leader that I want to be? Am I actually helping them out? Or am I just feeding into this culture of burnout, quitting, and turnover contagion? And I also highly recommend you guys check out my video on rage applying, which is also kind of the flip side of this coin. And I will see you all in the next video. Thank you, keeping everything simple. Have a great day.